Hello, great to meet you all. Uh, I'm still amazed by the venue, probably from everywhere went to speak. I think this is probably the coolest venue I've been into. I have some ideas already. So, I'm Timmy Ghiurau. I am innovation leader at Volvo Cars and also co-founder of the Point Labs, a creative venture studio working a lot with intersection of art, science, engineering, and design. So I'll go a bit to a few examples and a bit of my journey as a creative and a nerd in the same time. Um, is this the button or let's see. It's similar to every time we talk about AI or teleportation or going to Mars and we have a Zoom call, we still struggle with, hey, can you hear me? Are you connected? Is your mic on? And I do love technology. Oh, it works. All right, awesome. I was about to do a joke, how many Georgian engineers does it take? No, I'm joking. So the title of my talk is Snapback to Reality, Here Comes Gravity, inspired by Eminem lyrics. So I do love this specific tagline, even though if I'm making a keynote like this or I'm going to South by Southwest or talking to kindergarten, I use the same title because it describes the best my journey as a dreamer, my journey as working in corporate, my journey as being a creative and a nerd in the same time. And when everything looks good on paper, everything looks good in dreams, but when gravity hits you, that's when you actually need to learn how to adapt and how to, find better solutions. So, does it work? All right, kind of. So I'll take you through my timeline, hopefully. Now, yeah. So I'm Timmy Ghiurau, as I said. I'm from Romania, Transylvania. And as a kid, I was always a big dreamer. And I was like thinking on how I can impact the world and how I can, work with the things I'm good at, the things I recognize I'm good at, like technology, but I also had a sense of imperfection and blurriness. I did like to explore, I did like to push boundaries, I did like to go into places where I shouldn't be. So as any 14-year-old, I wanted to build games. I was really passionate about games. But in the same time, I was distracted and I wanted to be a rock star instead. So when I was 18, I moved to Copenhagen and I told my parents that I'm studying engineering, but I actually lied and went to study music. I went to Royal Academy of Music to play jazz and blues, but that was my first snapback to reality. I had to learn how to adapt. Artist life was hard. Copenhagen is probably one of the top most expensive cities in the world. My family was not prepared for that. I was not prepared for that either. So, yeah, I ended up like this. This was my first snapback to reality. Here comes gravity. I was homeless for 2 months, sleeping in the airport. I was carrying my guitars every morning to school to study. Then in the night, I was playing blues in various bars in Copenhagen. Still, the clicker doesn't work. Yeah. I was playing music to be able to afford to go to school. And in the same time, I still had a really long shot dream. I still wanted to be an artist. I did wanted to express myself with the music I was creating. But, it felt a bit like The Terminal with Tom Hanks. Like every morning I was trying to hide from security guards in the airport, run to find a good spot to sleep. And with a few months passing by, I was like, yeah, shit, my parents were right. I should have listened to them. So I moved back to the studying tech. So I went to this place in Copenhagen. Do you think we can solve this somehow? All right. Supposed to work right now. Yeah. So I moved to study in Copenhagen to Aalborg University. And this place was quite a magical place. It used to be Nokia's research center. And it was exactly at the time when Nokia was going down and bankrupt. So the university took over the space. And there was like fresh young people interested in creativity, building startups, paired up with like the world experts from Nokia, trying to, kind of see what's next around the corner. And then one of my teachers met me and he was like, hey, you remind me of one of my old students. And he referred to David Helgeson on the right, who's still one of my mentors. These three guys are also dreamers. They've been the founders of Unity, the game engine. And basically, 85% of all the mobile games that you play right now are made with Unity. All the simulations in automotive, in architecture, VR experiences, games are made with Unity. And these three guys had a dream as well. They wanted to democratize the tools to enable more creatives to, build games, help different industries to cope with, the challenges they have. But then I was like that nagging student that I went next to them is like, hey, can I work with you? Can I be your intern? Can I actually try out what you're doing? And in the same time, since I was a kid, I was fascinated by my babushka grandma that had this gift. She had 13 kids, and she had this gift to read people. Like she was looking at a person, and she would say everything about them. And I was so passionate and interested. It's like, what's her algorithm? Like, how is she doing it? So I went to study cognitive science, and I was trying to apply those algorithms into technology. So in the same space, I met this startup called the iTribe. We were looking into detecting the eye movement, but also different emotional valence that we can extract from, pupillometry, different patterns and of expression and the way the eye moves. And we started back then to look at really, really complex things. And this was like more than 15 years ago. So we started to put eye tracking in everything. It was like smartwatches, tablets, it was like early 2010, right? Then I hacked Fruit Ninja, and you were able to play with your eyes. And the eye is the fastest organ in your body, right? So the first time we tried Fruit Ninja with the eye, we broke the world record instantly because, everything was so fast, like instead of like just swiping. And we are really good with our perception to know what to look at and not to look at. It's called the Midas touch. The King Midas, everything that he was touching, he was turning into gold, even his loved ones. And at the same time, that's what we do with our eyes and perception. Like if we know that the bomb is there, we don't look there. And like we know what to focus on super fast. So we took this to CS. We showed it to Richard Branson, to Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus. And Palmer Luckey gave me a development kit. And I was thinking, how can I apply eye tracking in VR? How does the human eye work? How can we learn, more from the natural way of actually looking at the real world, translating to actions, translating it to behavior. So I took the first Oculus VR headset. It was still a duct tape version. It didn't really work. I took it back to Copenhagen from Las Vegas, and then I tried to put an eye tracking system in it. And I started to look at foveated rendering, which is this technique of if I'm looking at something here, everything else gets blurred. And in computers and graphical compute, everything that I'm not looking at doesn't get rendered at the highest quality. So all the textures, all the fonts, all the details, all the 3D models are at the worst quality because I'm not focusing on them. But if I look there at the cameras, they get in the hotspot, and this thing will be compressed. And that thing saved a lot of computational powers, because before the Oculus Quest that we know today, like they can be standalone with mobile GPUs, you would need a super crazy computer to run it. And it was, really complex. So we're thinking, yeah, maybe we should patent this, and maybe it will help this industry going forward. After this, Lego asked me, hey, because again, this magical place, Lego was there, Unity was there, Nokia was there, Volvo was there as well. So it was like that cantina effect. We were all hanging out, sharing ideas. And Lego said, hey, you're the eye tracking guy. Do you want to make a Jedi game for our Lego conference? And I was like, shit, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm a fan of Star Wars. I'll try it out. So I was doing also my, I think, bachelor thesis at that time. So I was thinking, how can I create a concept where you would look where to shoot and you would think when to shoot, as the Jedis were doing, right? And I was building this system with super clunky brainwaves. Again, now brain systems can be like this band on your head, but back then you really had to shave your head and put like all these sensors on your head. So we were researching with that and looking at how accurate we can get with thinking of actions and them happening. But then I was thinking of some military techniques where I could actually make the brain think what it needs to think. So I was flashing the screen red a few times. The human brain and the human eye wouldn't see it, but it would create these spikes on your brain. So whenever like a user was looking at a spaceship, this red flash was coming and they would think to shoot. And then, it just worked out. Except it looked amazing in paper, it worked amazing in lab, but snap back to reality, here comes gravity. I had to show it to 2,000 Danish kids. So good luck to put kids sitting in a chair calibrating these complex systems. I was thinking how I should gamify it, how should I make it part of the Jedi training. But then that gave us a lot of notoriety, like we were perceived as leaders in this, and a few years later, this guy acquired our company. I was excited but also frightened. Like all of my friends told me, hey, you need some lawyers. And me coming from East Europe, I was like, lawyers smell like trouble. I didn't know what patents meant. I didn't know how to negotiate a contract. So I was actually in conversation with Meta at that time to see how can we use eye tracking in VR, but with certain conditions. Like we shouldn't use it in consumer headsets, but like in enterprise, research, marketing, because you're able to extract some data, iterate on your products, iterate on your software. But it was quite dangerous to think ahead on what it could happen if, again, I was more amazed by my grandma's technique of reading people, and it was like, if the eye is the mirror to your soul, imagine the data that we can harness out of it. So I was a bit skeptical to frame the deal. So I moved to Silicon Valley for a while, but then when I came back, I had a bit of a bad taste of the tech world. It's not what I dreamt. It was, again, snap back to reality, here comes gravity. So I came to Copenhagen, and I moved into fashion for a while. I was like, maybe I gave up on my creative dream too fast. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten so deep into tech and research. So I started to work with a few Danish and Swedish brands on doing some creative direction, looking at how to create a concept, a scene. Because again, my question was, when I landed in Copenhagen, where the hell are all the Vikings? Because I only saw people with skinny jeans, Vans, skaters, bikers, and it's like, okay, all the hipsters are here, but where are the Vikings? So I was looking at incorporating different symbols from the Viking mythology into avant-garde fashion. But while doing it, I realized that that was exactly the same things I was doing when I was creating these virtual experiences. I was creating an environment, I was working with characters. I was creating scripts. I was like working with post-processing and different things. So again, the same magical cantina, Volvo was there, and they asked me, hey, you're the guy that works with games and simulations and eye tracking. We are building self-driving cars for the future. Do you want to try to build us a concept where we can try out these things before we launch it? So that's when my journey at Volvo started. I was anti-cars. I was anti-corporations. I came from startup world. I never imagined myself to work, in the most conservative industry in the world. And I remember this time when my dad visited me in Sweden, and I had this concept car, a Volvo S90 that just came out, and he was driving it, super proud. And I could show him, he's like, hey, Dad, I made that button. And maybe 5 million people will press it in the future. And when I told him that, my brain exploded because I understood the power of scale. I understood that, holy shit, so all the eye tracking things and the technologies that I was building to help with safety, with sustainability, with human behavior, I could potentially save 5 million lives if I do it right. So I started my journey at Volvo. And the reason why I told you my journey so far is to highlight the battle I had inside me of being a creative and being a nerd. And it took some years to understand that the intersection between creative thinking and critical thinking, that's where innovation happens. I had to understand that you need a box to think outside the box. And me as a creative, I didn't need freedom, I needed constraints. And automotive was constraining me quite a lot. I learned how to work with all, the corporate policies, the politics, the limited budgets, the IP rights. I learned how to actually structure my work and creativity really well. I also learned as a dreamer how to move from vision to solution. I'm working currently with 2050, 2070 scenarios. How do I bring it back to what I can do today with the tools I have in my hand right now? How do I actually enable people around me to actually work as an ecosystem and being able to tackle some of these complex things? I learned as well that it takes a lot of iterations. It takes a lot of steps to get there. You will need to go through a lot of imperfections. And then one of the most important lessons was deciding what not to do. If you take all the art in the world and put it in the biggest room like this one, you'll have the biggest art warehouse, not the biggest museum. Museum, it's about what you don't put on the wall. And that was like a super, super strong lesson for me because me working with technology and getting expertise in working with human behavior, with eye tracking, with brain waves, I thought that everything can be solved with the tools I had in my hand. When you hold a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. So I was looking for problems for my solutions, which was the wrong approach. I started to listen better. I tried to listen to understand, not to give a response. And when my journey at Volvo started, let me see if this will work. No, I will go to this. Yeah. I was looking into, okay, now I was asked to work with the simulators at Volvo. But I found out that there are 7 more simulators at Volvo. I found out that there are 7 more teams in a big corporation working on the same thing and they don't talk to each other. And me working with gaming experiences in VR, I was looking at how can we make it more of a consistent ecosystem or set of tools that we can use, not repeatedly do the same mistakes, the same efforts. So looking at, we've been using virtual reality at automotive probably since the 80s. But now, since the technology got better and better, we were able to cut out a lot of lead time, from a sketch to actually deploying a car usually takes 5 to 7 years. We were able with this technology to help engineers and designers talk earlier in the process have exposure to the executives, have exposures to the user, and being able to have users in the loop to actually understand if we are building the right thing for the right people. So, of course, we looked at simulation, product design, marketing experiences, building car configurators, because everyone needed a car model to be able to, expose it, to be able to put it into a simulation. And then if we think about self-driving cars, we needed to see how it acts in an environment. How does it understand potholes, lane marks, different things in the traffic that might occur. So we're able to train this model working really close with Unity and Vario, a company that I'll go into it later. And since Volvo was really open since the beginning, like opening the patents for the seatbelt, I was thinking, why not opening the patents and making our simulator open source to everyone? So I collaborated with Unity and Volvo, and we opened up our simulator. So now everyone that uses Unity, which is like 7 million people, are able to download, the Volvo simulator, create their traffic scenarios, create their games. I saw people creating the Mario Kart Volvo version. People go crazy with Volvo Transformers. The car transforms into a robot. Like, it enables the community to act, right? This is me actually in the simulator. Looks slightly a bit like me with an XC40. And I'll give you a bit of a flavor of how a day in the lab at Volvo looks like. So we'd look at serious things, like we're always having this servant leadership mindset. We take people in from different departments, manufacturing, branding, strategy, public affairs, and we're looking at how to solve problems for them, but also how to help them build competence in these new areas, like immersive technologies, working with generative AI in the pipeline, ethics, sustainability. Even when you're doing design, how do you do sustainable design? How do you do sustainable AI development and all those aspects? Because, you need to practice what we preach. So this is a thing that I'm most proud of. I did in 2018. I call it Tinder for designers. Basically, our designers were able to drive a car on the real road with a headset and swipe left or right with different car concepts as we were driving. And you could even see that, we could have like a virtual moose crossing the road, so we could test like safety scenarios that are either too dangerous or too rare to test in real life. So we were able to try these things out really, really early, and we were reducing the time of development and testing by years, not months, years, which, having a designer with tears in their eye, like from a sketch to actually being able to drive it within a few weeks, it's like something amazing, because they would have to wait maybe 5 to 7 years to be able to do that. Then we were looking into, remote collaboration. When COVID hit, we realized that you can't build a car on Zoom, right? Like, it's super complex. It takes a lot of meetings. You need to go and see different parts. If you're doing validation in user experience, you have to understand, how different components work, how they're integrated. So we were able to put our simulator available to people in different departments to understand the status of our cars. This is the level of realism we were getting 2018. This was before Apple Vision Pro, Quest 3, and anything else. We were like just pushing every boundary. Like, I was having a real car and a virtual car sitting next to each other, and you could see your reflection in both of the cars. And I could make both disappear. So I had people from Autodesk and NVIDIA getting confused that I thought that that's the real car, but now it disappeared, so I don't know what's happening, because I just touched it a few minutes ago. So being able to work with perception, but also the level of detail that is required in design and engineering to understand, how to make proper validation and, going to the details. Of course, we will still give us a lot of time for certification and like going through all the validation parts to build the vehicles, but this process enables us to actually make more and more iterations, looking at the things that matter. Like, imagine that the demo that I showed you, a designer could sit in the back while we are testing the car, and I can say directly with generative AI, move that blinker 5 pixels to the left. That whole interaction usually takes 3 or 4 weeks. You have to go through an approval system. You have to go to the head of design, to the UX researcher, ask, okay, we made this study. We realized that we need to move it 5 pixels to the right. Can we book another test drive in a few weeks? Now we could do it real time from the backseat, right? It's like, okay, change the interface. Move the navigation from the screen to the head-up display. Change the colors, change the theme, change the brightness. We were able to do that while we were driving. And this really enabled us to move super, super fast with everything. And of course, that made us, the boring car company, make history. We were all over the news when we launched this project. And another dream of mine was, since I was a kid, to be on Mythbusters. So we were featured on Adam Savage channel from Mythbusters that they were trying actually to bust the myth, which car is real or virtual, and if we can actually drive with the headset without getting sick. And that was like another boundary-pushing event for me, where I realized that, wow, these powerful tools that we have in our hand can change an industry. But how do we move from human-centric design? How do I move from researching so many years to understand emotion to nudging emotion? So that's when I started a new chapter. I started to go from learning to understanding. So I looked into world building, and what is really, really interesting, that is actually I did a 3-year research on Tbilisi, Georgia. I realized it today, actually. When I walked around here, it's like I saw this space somewhere. I've never been here, but I did see it in my Miro boards and research mood boards. So I was thinking that we don't need better technology to move forward. We need better narratives. So for us to actually go and change the future, change, complex things like equality, climate, circularity, work with sustainability, like ethics with AI, we need to understand and have collective imaginated futures. Basically, how do we build the same vocabulary to describe the future that we collectively want to live in? So I went to the source. Again, snap back to reality. I asked somebody that I was looking up to for many, many years, Alex McDowell. He's my mentor right now. He was creative director of Fight Club, Minority Report, Black Mirror. So I went to the source. I went to Hollywood to tell stories. And I said, well, if Volvo doesn't build cars in 2050 or 2070, what would Volvo do? That was my question. And he gave me this framework of world building, of asking what-if questions like this. How do I structure it? How do I pair it in lenses? And all these techniques started with the movie Minority Report, which was like late 90s. Steven Spielberg came to McDowell and asked him, hey, I don't have a script for the movie, but how would Tom Cruise go to work in 2040? So they started to imagine the future. And what is interesting that with this movie, there are 120 patents associated with the Minority Report movie. Virtual assistants, voice interaction, AR head-up displays, gesture control. So all these things sparked out of the movie script because they were able to imagine a future and how we would interact, but as a whole, not like isolated concepts. And that's the beautiful part of world building. We started to look at, for instance, the history at Volvo. We collected all the narratives that we could find of. We even did like a kind of X-ray on different cities in the world, like including Tbilisi. We looked at the challenges. We looked at lenses from policy, politics, infrastructure, economy, trends. So instead of just doing trends, how do we put these lenses together and just twist one lens and say, what if the car industry makes this change? How is the whole world changing? What if, instead of using gas, we're going for electric vehicles because EU and the Congress and US and in Asia, they're taking these steps forward. How is that affecting the way we're building technology, the way we are integrating technology, the way we are selling technology? And as an example is like we are moving from human-centric story to society-centric to planetary-centric, right? So if you think about safety, the core value of Volvo, what is personal safety? That can be healthcare, mindfulness. What is like society safety? That can be translated to cybersecurity, to healthcare systems. What is planetary safety, sustainability, circularity, the way we are building mobility systems, the way we're building infrastructure. So we're simulating this in a lot of, simulator scenarios, and we are able to extract a lot of data on these, changes and parameters that we had in our mind. But in the same time, I was thinking of how would I ask better questions? What if I take myself a step out of Volvo and look at the problem like automotive, fashion, creativity, technology, but from a different side? And as a dreamer, I went back to the whiteboard and I was thinking, how do I dream in years? How do I plan in months? How do I iterate in weeks? And how do I test every day my assumption? Because a dream requires discipline. Purpose gives you vision. Passion is endurance. It's like how much are you willing to go through all this stuff? And working with this emerging tech and deep tech, you always get that resistance. The here comes gravity part. As much as you're dreaming, there's no budget for this. This technology is for games. It doesn't have a room here in automotive. We are world experts in this. How will it solve this? And I started to look at, as I was obsessed with how do we say better narratives, how do I move from understanding emotions to moving emotions, I looked to the basics. And I looked at the Renaissance movement, and then I looked into Bauhaus movement, which I'm a really, really big fan. So I started the Point Labs on the side, which is this venture studio lab. We are working with different partners, clients, but it was inspired by MIT Media Lab. I was collaborating with them for a few years. And Neri Oxman, she's like been like my role model for many years. She's like an architect, a biotechnologist, a researcher, a fashion designer, a teacher. Like she's like doing a lot of different things. And I always felt bad that I'm spreading myself too thin. But what I found out is like, how do I convert from science? I take information that I know about the world, and through science I convert it to information. And from information, through engineering, I convert that to utility. From utility, through design, I'm able to change behavior. From behavior, through art and better storytelling, I'm able to change culture. And that was like my obsession lately. Like, how do we actually deal with collective, imaginated, augmented futures, where we are having AI embedded with the way we think, the way we're expressing ourselves? I constantly tell my students, they're asking me, can I use ChatGPT to work on my assignment? And I was like, sure, go for it. I'll use ChatGPT to assess you. You pretend that you're graduating, and I'm pretending that I'm hiring you down the way the line. So it's like, you can do it, but don't skip the fundamentals. Like I appreciate ingenuity, I appreciate creativity, I appreciate people think outside the box, but don't skip the basics. Don't skip the fundamentals, because if we lose the sense of why, and no matter how grandiose or amazing that why is for us, that can kill us. Like if you lose the sense of the vision, the purpose that we are doing things. So that's why I look back to the curriculum of how Bauhaus was in 1920s, studying architecture, aesthetics, different principles in mathematics, in photography, and then how that translates today with the technologies we're having with blockchain, AI, and immersive tech. So with that in mind, I think 2 years ago, I was in connection with, we actually met on a plane, and now we are really, really good friends. It's a studio from Istanbul called Ouch. I think they had an exposition here some time ago. They are my BFFs. I think in February they had the first AI art sent to the moon. We collaborated together to premiere at Cannes a month ago at the Cannes Festival. So people were able to connect with the headset with the piece on the moon, and based on your emotions and the way you're interacting, the piece on the moon was changing real time. Again, it's a dream. We were looking at how do we intersect science data from CERN and NASA about the observable universe, about the human atlas, connected to our human behavior, and we're able to project that not only on the moon, but being able to experience it in a headset and actually have like a really personal interaction with it. And that, again, was a dream that just came out. We gathered the best engineers, the best developers, the best designers to put it out. And actually looking at this venue, I have a few ideas of a next step. And that's like a super strong audio. I will skip it. Sorry for that. Yeah. I want to go also in the power of manifesting. Like, if you understood through all of my examples, I was looking ahead, dreaming, but then looking what I have in my head now to actually be able to do something. Same with Vario, this company that, we were able to do this crazy mixed reality experiences. When they launched the company 2017, they were like, we will have our technology on the space station. We will train astronauts. We will have this in space. And like 2 years ago, the headset was sent to the International Space Station, and people were able to actually use the headset from there to actually work remotely with, the human-based team. And that enabled us, again, to reach different boundaries. Like, this is beyond Earth. This is not just, we have a bad connection and you're muted on Zoom. This is actually, if you're able to think so far ahead, and we are able to articulate our dreams better and share it with each other with a common vocabulary, we will be able to do so many big things. And we always overestimate what we can do in 10 or 20 or 30 years, but we underestimate what we can do in a week or 2 weeks. And I see that now when I work with investing in startups and working with startups and seeing how fast they do iterations nowadays. And all the tools and technologies, I don't think there is any excuse not to be creative. I think it's so easy right now to just, take your dream, the dream that scared you for so long, just, take it in your hand and try to start building it. And I think I'll just finish here somewhere. Yeah, these are extras. Yeah, thank you.